young. I remember I played a show on my 21st birthday, and I was already shit-faced. Someone drew all over me, and I fell asleep on stage on a chair. Oof. But then woke up and kept playing. With this Amazing Baby, who's a band I was in after that.
Is that your current band? They're still playing or no?
No. That was a band I was in, in the first band that kind of got signed. That I was in 2008.
So
2009.
could you guys effectively do that for a living for a while?
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I mean, that kind of kicked it off, and it was it was part of sort of the big MGMT scoop of New York bands, and we were all kind of in a bit of a scene, like Yay Sayer, Chairlift, and shit like that.
Peak of the Pitchfork era, kind of.
Yes, it was kind of like we had there was the Strokes and the Yeahs, and the Rapture and stuff in the early 2000s, and there's a little bit of a lull where I feel like that's like the We Are Scientists era, that where Arctic Monkeys, Block Party, a lot of English stuff, and then I think that it kind of slowly came back here at the end of the first decade of the 2000s.
And then how'd you find yourself as the bass player for MGMT?
I just knew that I went to school with them, and we were always in different bands. And actually, when the MGMT, which is called The Management, was happening in the school at school Wesleyan, where I went to, I would play with them sometimes in the band, and then we'd do other stuff. And then I formed Amazing Baby, MGMT. I mean, they kind of, the story with them is that they basically were after we graduated from college, the band, there was no sort of talk of the band continuing. Ben, which was primarily Ben and Andrew, still is. Ben stayed up, he moved back upstate where he's from, and Andrew was living with me, and I was kind of starting Amazing Baby. And then literally Andrew or the MGMT MySpace account got a DM from Columbia.
No shit.
And that's how it happened. So they kind of were I guess we have to become a real band. And I was already sort of doing Amazing Baby at the time, but Amazing Baby was kind of a very sort of behind the music style, promised the world, got a huge record deal, everything seemed to be going our way, and then it was almost like our manager found the sort of the people in the record industry who still hadn't gotten the news that it wasn't the 90s anymore, and you can't spend money like that, and got them to spend money like it was the 90s. And then literally maybe a month and a half after our record came out, the record label folded, and they realized that they completely blew the budget. We had no tour support. So it was just something okay, that we've been building towards this moment. And as soon as the moment happens, it's you're on your own. You know what I mean? And that kind of killed the momentum. And then
was the advance massive?
Yeah. Well, I thought I was a rich guy. Yeah. When I was not.
So they fold, and then do you have to pay back the advance still?
No.
That's kind of cool.
But all other money, it's I think it's going a long way, but it's the way we were spending money, what I got in the advance, and I ended up having to fund things or pay ourselves back because, the initial budget didn't exist. They gave us we had the advance, and we had sort of other things budgeted, but everything else went. So I definitely lived off of it for a while, but
what's a 90s budget to put out an album from a major, $100,000, half a
for
mil?
A first record?
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends. I would say I don't really know. All I know is that people who were in the music industry in the 90s did fairly well. The guy who signed Live is probably never has to work again, even though the band Live do. You know what I mean? Ed Kulgacek.
You ever do shows with those cats?
No. But I don't even know if they do no show. I do know one thing about them, which is that apparently
They're all fired except Ed.
it's a shame. That guy, the drummer who can't find his drum set in the I Alone video, who's walking around with a candle.
I can't remember that.
He's not there anymore.
I think he's fired.
He's got fired. Well, I do know that there's actually called Live.
Oh.
And people just call them Live.
No, Live sounds way cooler.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Live is actually a pretty cool band name. Live is horrible. Sounds like a cheap Christian rock band. Well, maybe they were Christian-y
I think they were
Buddhist
into
rock
some.
or something.
They were into something funky, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever been like? Have you ever like been in sort of a stressful-ish, maybe meeting a significant other's parent, or no, maybe that's not a good example.
Oh yeah.
Have you been in a situation where somebody gets your name wrong and you miss the point of correcting them, so you just go with it?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that's what happened to Liv.
Yeah.
You know?
That's exactly what happened to Liv.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Like the first disc jockey to play them on a major radio station called them Live, and like, who are you gonna do? Be a fucking asshole and be like, it's actually
Well,
Liv.
maybe they heard that and they were like, shit, that does sound way cooler.
Yeah. I mean, the words are the same.
And then the singer was like, ah, and he had a
little
fan
braid.
blowing on him.
Yeah.
In front of the stage with
He
his
was
shirt
like-
unbuttoned.
No shirt.
No shirt.
He was kind of, for a no shirt guy in the heyday of the Chili Peppers, he was pretty.
He was jacked.
No, I was gonna say the opposite.
Oh, he wasn't jacked initially, but now he's pretty jacked.
Okay.
Ed Kowalczyk. I ran into him backstage at Summerfest once. I was like, I recognized this bald guy walk past me, and I was like to the promoter I knew, I was like, hey, is that the guy from Rage Against the Machine? He was like, no, that's Ed Kowalczyk from Live.
So you grabbed him by his ponytail and he's like, get over here, and give him a kiss on the head.
I was like, he was like, you should go try to get him to leave. He's been back here like trying to pick up chicks for 6 hours. He played like 7 hours ago.
Yeah.
And then I went up and I was like, hey, you want to do the pod? And he was like, I can't. I smoked weed. I can't do it. So,
Yeah. He's like, he left I Alone, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I do. I still love that band. I've seen them on like at state fairs like probably 11 times.
I think that's
for
their
free,
circuit. That's
for
their
sure.
circuit. Wait. Summerfest.
Summerfest. Have you played Summerfest?
I played Summerfest with Modest Mouse, and that
Nice.
was fun. You can get a ticket if you buy a 12-pack of Busch Light, I think. I saw that in the store. Is this true?
Could be. There's all kinds of promotions to get Summerfest tickets. You bring in like 10 cans of chili or
Yeah.
a rack of ribs. There's always a way to get in.
It's a good vibe. I went to a bar before we played Summerfest that I really liked. What was it?
Dude, there's more bars per capita in Wisconsin than any other state.
Really?
I think it's America's second drunkest state. Yeah.
The Brewers.
Brew Crew, America's drunkest team. But you're going on tour, what, next week with Modest Mouse?
No. I'm going on tour in May.
That's got to be a nice gig. Is that like a low pressure gig for you?
Oh God, no.
It's high pressure?
Yeah, it's
High
a lot. I
stakes?
mean, it's also it's like it's MGMT's sort of play by numbers, like very like backing track central. Like these are the songs. You're going to play this song, and it'll be over in 3 minutes and 46 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but Modest Mouse, first of all, their catalog is huge, and it's like, and I got the job writing the set lists, so I write the set list for all the shows, which is kind of good for me, like, because I can kind of not put songs I don't know on them. You know what I mean? But then occasionally, there's like, Isaac will just start playing a song, or like, and I'll be like, just have to figure it out, or like shout a song. I mean, I remember like maybe the second show I played, like he came over to me and said, like, God is an Indian and you're an asshole. And I was like, what the fuck is that shit? Like, fuck you. You're like some Jim Morrison-esque fucking insult. And then I realized it was a song.
Okay.
But I thought he was like, I'm like, you're an asshole. Fuck you. Jim. You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like something Jim Morrison
He was
doing
like trying to challenge you into an avant-garde jam or something. That's what
Well,
you
he
thought?
was. I thought he didn't like what I was playing,
Okay.
and it was like a weird, sort of poety hippie way of telling me I should shut the fuck up. But it wasn't. It wasn't.
So there's a bit of like unhinged, like wobbliness, like movement, malleability to the set. Like
Tons,
you can switch up what you want to play as far as like your licks and stuff to a degree.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
that's fun.
it's much different. There's also like, I kind of have to anticipate what Isaac's playing a lot. So like, because he'll play whatever he wants. So like, it's almost like I have to learn each song twice, where I have to learn sort of whoever's playing, either the Johnny Marr part or Dan Gallucci part, and then like also be aware of what Isaac's playing in case he decides to play something else, so I can sort of cover that, So it's actually like pretty. It's intense for me. It's like pretty like to sort of also like sonically stay away from where he is.
Yeah.
So like when I first joined the band, I was kind of positioned. They had a stage plot already, and I saw it and was like, Isaac here, Russell here, Jeremiah here, Tom here, Benny here, and then it's a guitarist with a question mark over there. And so I was like, okay, but I couldn't see Isaac's hands, and I was like, this is impossible. Like I need to see where he's moving on the neck to kind of like go the opposite way. So it's just like, because we both almost constantly play, but like in a way that like, and he's singing, so he can't do the same thing I'm doing. So I just like to figure out how to stay out of his way, cover his parts when he decides to do something else, or play something that sounds good with his parts. It's not for every song. A lot of the older stuff, this happens.
Have you ever like fucked up royally or gotten in trouble?
No.
Nice.
I don't think so. I've got in trouble.
Like minor scoldings?
Yeah. But no, I think it's like, I feel like there's a good, there's a good vibe. I think that's part of it. Like, I think that Isaac and I are able to sort of feel each other out pretty easily right away. So like, I think if I was playing over him, it wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah. He wouldn't have been shy to let you know, I'm sure.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not. But sometimes it's like because he's, so focused, there's something going on stage that he doesn't like, that he can't really figure out where it's coming from. Because there's 6 people on stage, and like a lot of mics going, because we have a percussionist. So like, that picks up a lot of ambient noise. And then like sometimes the keyboard, like a lot of time when we tour outside of the States, like you rent gear, or sometimes it's like literally a different keyboard for every show.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are like crazy, where like a patch is super loud and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I get blamed for that, even though I'm like, dude, I don't play with keyboards. But like, it's just there's sort of a too loud, distracting noise in the sonic register of a guitar.
I mean, if you got 6 people on stage, that's everybody has to work within tremendous discipline to not step on each other. That takes time and a lot of shows probably to dial in those nuances.
Yeah. But it's been like, it's interesting. It's like, I joined Modest Mouse, and I'm the youngest person in the group, but as a full adult. And it kind of feels like when you texted me right before you came here and you're like, think of, whack-ass tour stories. I'm like, I feel like I was going through Modest Mouse shows I play. I'm like, everything, it just seems like you don't get into that situation, like as an adult. Like I was thinking about, I also think that like, everyone used to get really fucked up. Like I remember with Amazing Baby, the band we were playing before, like South by Southwest, the lead singer threw up on the ride cymbal. So every time the drummer fucking played, like vomit was spraying everywhere, and he was just mouthing like, "Fuck you, I quit." He didn't quit then. We quit shortly after, and like that doesn't happen anymore, right? And like
A lot of bands break up at South by Southwest. That's the place to do it.
yeah. Well, it's
All the all the senses all at once, playing rough shows, no green rooms, everyone's on top of each other. You've been traveling down there in a shitty van. Of course you're gonna break up.
it's like
Prime.
physically impossible to sort of like be a band who comes down there alone without any help and like who has a lot of gigs and actually make all your gigs.
Sure.
Like, I mean, they used to do CMJ in New York, and I remember that being like, because Austin, like, South by Southwest is a big deal for Austin. They're like, here they come.
Yeah.
Let's close these fucking. But New York was like, what? There's like a fucking,
CMJ was cool.
It was cool, but
And
like
that-
New York
that-
doesn't
that's-
stop for CMJ.
Right. We would call it, just for those who don't know what CMJ is, it was like a little, like a mini indie rock South by Southwest for New York,
it
sort
was
of.
definitely like the New York equivalent of South
Yeah.
by Southwest. I don't know. I would say when I started to kind of do music professionally, blah, 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 they were almost an equivalent. Like, I think South by Southwest was more desirable because it's more pleasant.
Yeah.
And CMJ, I just remember like, well, fuck, it's rush hour. We have to get a cab. We have to get 2 cabs or 3 cabs, put the drums in one. You know what I mean? Like, and
Brutal.
then hopefully like get over the fucking Williamsburg Bridge in time to like make the next show.
No
was a-
backline, huh?
I mean, sometimes.
Did you have any nice, cool victories from South by Southwest or CMJ, where the classic story of like some cool A&R guy sees you and it's like, I'm gonna sign you, and he's got a big cigar in his mouth, and a top hat?
No. We had this sort of like Amazing Baby had this sort of hot band at South by Southwest thing, but I think we already had a record. Yeah, that was a kind of fun thing. That was like when I went there with Stylophone, the band I mentioned before, who played the Raven England. Like, that no one cares about you, and you can tell. Like, but the feeling that people are like do care about you was exhilarating, and I think we handled it by getting ridiculously drunk the whole week and playing horrible shows that led to vomiting on cymbals. And
It's got to be a weird feeling, like the scene has chosen you, like the cool people think you're cool. Like that's interesting type of pressure I can't say I've ever experienced.
yeah, it is. I think but it's also all lies. It's kind of like people just see you as an investment, but they don't really care. I mean, it's not all lies, but it's like, I think that having that being the first time I experienced this, like, I had a bit more of the wherewithal to sort of see through a lot of what people were telling me, but some of the other guys in the band like definitely believed everything, and I think when it all kind of fell apart, it was extra difficult. Like, I do think there's some sort of like rock and roll PTSD. Like, if you're like, this is what I want to do with like for my life, and then you fucking get close, and people are like, here it comes, this is it. Like, remember people telling like me when the Amazing Baby was kind of blowing up. So Amazing Baby was like blowing up and then disappeared. You know what I mean? But like, you're like, I remember somebody being like, you're never gonna have to wake up before 2 p.m. again. And I was like, that sounds kind of depressing. But I get what you're saying. But like, overall, I feel like that's not good for my mental
You're living
health.
my dream, man.
Like lunchtime at 7. Like, what is this, fucking Spain?
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
But like certain things, like, I do think that was also like the NME era, where like the Pete Doherty era, like, where kind of rock, and like there was almost a revival of the kind of drug-addled rock musician, who
Junkie guitar.
who like dates a model, gets her into heroin, makes a fool out of himself at a fancy dinner, but like it's cool, like is gone, goes missing, and I feel like that was encouraged by the people who worked with us, like to sort of
The end of an era, that was.
Yeah, and like this, the sort of the reclamation of decadence after like fucking Nirvana fucked it all up. You know what I mean? Like this sort of like, you know, you weren't this sort of reclusive, sensitive, heady, angry artist as much as you were kind of like the, you know, fucking Dr. Vibes, Party McGee, like.
Yeah, it's like the overlords of branding wanted you not to care, which is such a upside down way to do it, you know? It's so interesting. And like must be bizarre and strange and difficult being young guys and trying to navigate that as it always seems to be. It's like because it's not like a band doing it all on their own steam, getting in a van, playing, routing their own tours. It's like you're about to be like latched into the culture.
Right.
So many things have to go right. It's like the A&R guy that signed you has to stay on. The label has to not fold. The label guy has to not have a scandal. You know, there's like all these things that have to, that you have no control over.
And not only that, but they sort of set you up. Like, I think this is also a very English phenomenon. This is what they do. England chooses as a nation that they love certain things. But they love certain things. They love their idea of what certain things are, right? Which might not be correct. And then they sort of push the things they like to fit in with their ideals. And then at the same time, with the same sort of kind of like flippant whimsy that they decided to obsess over something, they turn on it and hate it. There's a lot of like, and I think that could have happened with Amazing Baby. Like we got bigger in England, and so we were over there a lot, and like, you know, the NME did a cover story on us, and they went to Amsterdam, and they gave us mushrooms, right, and followed us around. And I remember just being like, "This is horrible." Like, I am on mushrooms, and someone is actually following me and writing down everything I do and say. It's really happening.
It'll be cool, bro.
Yeah, like, and then like the article came out, and it was just like, I mean, I'm sure we said dumb things all day, but they managed to find the dumbest things that we said and then make them dumber, and like, you know, it felt very kind of exploitative. And
were they cool when you hung out with them, and then they kind of like turned on you once the story came out?
Not really. Like the guy, that was the other thing. It's like when you're on psychedelic drugs, like you're very aware of who you like and who you don't like.
Yeah, sure.
You know? And I remember not liking this guy, and it was almost like I was on the precipice of like having kind of a bad trip the whole time. And I just wanted to be over.
Yeah.
And like the guy was just sort of like, I don't think he took mushrooms, but he was just like making jokes. Yeah. It just felt very like, yeah, let's fucking fuck these guys up and put them in a fishbowl and like watch what they do.
Right. And you're like in your mid early 20s at the time?
Yeah, like 24 or something.
Yeah. It's not like it'd be so hard to tell NME to go fuck themselves. It's like, they're going to do a story on us. They want us to eat mushrooms. We got to eat the mushrooms.
Exactly.
You know?
But that's the thing is I think that like a lot of sort of the resurgence of like rock and roll 70s decadence, which I do think like Strokes kind of brought back. You know what I mean? Like,
because they were rowdy and
they
party
were like,
boys. Yeah.
They were at all the fashion parties. They were like, you know, they would, in the weird way, they like kind of play by the rules. It's almost like, would Nirvana take fucking mushrooms because some guy from NME was like, we want you to do this? Like, probably not. Like, and I mean, obviously, there were other issues with that band, but I do think there's sort of like the industry designed rebellion, which I think was a lot of that scene, was kind of, in fact, like way more out of control for the artists and like, you know, could have dictated by managers and PR people and things like that. And people just ate it up.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the time, because they're trying to create a story and a context and sort of ignoring the music part, the actual music atrophies. And when like you realize that's why you're here, it's like, oh shit, like how do I do this? And they also, it's like, I mean, it's celebrity culture in a way. It's like they're not.
Yeah.
Once you start to bore people by your antics, they'll find somebody else who doesn't, you know?
Exactly. Do you think that could ever come back, like the embellishment or the praise of like partying in rock and roll? Like it's cool to get fucked up.
I think for sure.
Really?
Like I also don't think, I think that now, you know, that people are able to sort of be their own PR. Like I think that sort of culture exists in like social media for sure. Like with, I don't think the industry has even enough power or sway to create that sort of situation anymore. But I do think that people want attention and they have the ability to, like, they need to do something that will, I mean, it's very difficult to just like write music and think that that's enough. Like,
yeah.
and also
Releasing it into the void, something you
Yeah.
think is really good, and you just plop it out there.
exactly, man. It's like, fuck,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, I think what we were saying earlier, but I think this was off air about sort of music journalism kind of taking a big hit and sort of the decline of the importance of a record review is that, like, because of this fact that, like, music's free. So, like, when you buy a record, right? When you buy anything, you feel a duty to yourself to use it. Of
course, yeah.
Right? So you spend fucking $17 on a CD or something, like, and you don't like the first song, you'll go to the second one. You know what I mean? And then you'll listen to the whole record. But like when music's free, if you don't like the first 10 seconds of a song, you'll never listen to that band again.
So true.
So it's like, fuck, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to give music value again. It's maybe it's not worth trying. Maybe it is a fight worth fighting. We were thinking. I was talking to my bass player Sean, and we were looking at these old medieval paintings of like, you know, peasants storming a castle and like in like the art museum and like cutting the head off the leader and like they were like violent. These are like from whatever the 1200s, crazy old creepy medieval paintings. And I was like, that would be a cool ass painting to have in the New York Art Museum, is like musicians storming the Spotify headquarters and like taking it and like, you know,
but even
killing the overlords in a medieval.
Storming buildings now has been co-opted by the fucking right. You can't storm a goddamn thing. Yeah, I mean that would be cool. It'd be fun to have like specific, you know, get David Byrne in there on his bike. You know what I mean?
Exactly. You need some big names to help with the cause. I just think musicians as a whole, like none of us would be willing to go to jail for multiple years in jail for a slim possibility of getting paid more from streaming revenues.
Oh, 100%. It's also like the truth of the matter is like,
oh, can I get another little?
Like what are you gonna do? Like you can't fight Spotify. You can't fight streaming. That's just, it is what it is. Like, I don't know. It's complicated. It's like interesting. So I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but my band Spiral Heads, that's like, where I sing along with our guitarist Jim, and it's kind of more of a punk rock thing. Like, we kind of started in 2019, put out a couple records, and like got some good shows, and it seemed exciting. Then fucking lockdown, like, really took the wind out of our sails. But we wrote a record and like finished it. It's coming out in a few weeks, and like I don't really know what to do. Like, I don't really like, I feel kind of like, I mean, a lot of the reason because Modest Mouse keeps me so busy, I just don't know if I have the hustle in me to sort of like ask people to come to shows and like, you know.
And two, it's got to be a mindfuck playing like nice ass theaters that are packed every night, and then all of a sudden you're just like the scrappiness of the DIY thing. I mean, I feel you, man. Like, I feel as far as musicians go, like I I kind of enjoy the music business side. Like I study it, I try to learn about it. I feel like I know more than the average musician, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, how long have you been doing this for? Like,
I've been doing it full time about 11, 12 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think what I was going with that is like, if Spiral hasn't already existed and record a record, like I don't know if I would ever start a new band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like go through those. Like if this didn't already exist, I wouldn't make it exist now. Like I think partly because I got lucky enough to be asked to join a heritage band, so to speak, with a built-in fan base that like has existed long enough that like people actually do still buy Modest Mouse records. I'm sure not in the way that they used to, but like the fans want to own the vinyl, and there's also just like going to be people at the shows, and I don't have to create, like I don't even, over the pandemic, watching the way sort of music and the industry developed, and you know, little things were like, you know, the amount, how much ticket prices cost, like there's how bad royalties got, how like, you know, there's the big sort of promotion, you know, music promotional companies, or like the, you know, live music companies like stopped offering insurance on tours, like kind of like made it very difficult and expensive to do that. It's like it just seems like such a kind of headache, and it's almost like I liked being a musician because I could be myself, right? And that's sort of, and it was a world and an industry and a profession that allowed that.
Yeah.
But it's almost like right now, I don't have it in me to fucking shoot 3 TikTok videos a day and do all this crazy shit and go fucking live. Like I just don't.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Like that's.
Well, we're working for free. You know, we work for we all work for Facebook. We all work for Instagram. We all work for free. And I would like to think like the public and everyone will wake up to this at some point, that we're all kind of in this trance, being slaves to the algorithm. And we've talked about this on the pod before, but one of the things that, like, if I could put out music, like have someone cut up clips, put out music onto Spotify where I didn't have to be in the videos, or sorry, into TikTok, into Instagram, right, that's a little more tolerable to me than me like standing in front of my phone being like, hey, what's up, guys? Got a new single. But actually, your videos get suppressed and they get throttled, they get less attention if your face isn't in the video. At least on Instagram, that's true. So that's a weird kind of dark note.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, you know what, I'm going to pause for a second.
Yeah,
I just
of
want to
course.
get a glass of water.
Cool. Oh, can I have some more water?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, we're back.
Cool. You know, so a couple of thoughts like I had over the pandemic, like, was I started to kind of like look at, and I think I've said this before on a podcast, but take a kind of very, very high bird's eye view on like the history of professional musicians, right? And for 99.9% of the time that people have been professional musicians, and I'm talking about, you know, centuries and centuries and centuries, it was nearly impossible to make music. Like you, like Mozart, Beethoven are playing the fucking parlors of the aristocracy. Like you're literally playing in fucking someone rich dude's, you know, living room.
You mean impossible to play music or make money on music, or both?
Like,
yeah.
It was only this like little blip, like from basically like, you know, the late 50s till now, where suddenly musicians were rich and they were famous, and they were on fucking private jets, and they were like, you know, musicians could become extremely wealthy. And when I was watching all this shit happen, and I, you know, also like where it was especially the time it wasn't clear like when the pandemic would end and things like that, or
Yeah.
if this will just be kind of, this is our life from here on out, or we'll be dealing with this sort of situation every couple of years where suddenly live music will stop. Like, I was like, is this it? Is this
Yeah.
now? Are we going back to the dark age? Was this
Medieval
like
times where we're just
Yeah.
jokers,
Was this like fucking,
jesters in the court?
5-decade period where like musicians could be rich, like something that they'll talk about in, hundreds of years? Like, that was weird. Like,
Yeah, a little blip of
Yeah.
glory.
and then I'm like, well, you don't sell records anymore. Touring is financially extremely difficult. Like, any source of income for musicians has become, it's just so, it's like so to obtain income from being a musician is so difficult that I was just seeing like, maybe this is the fucking end,
Yeah, no, it definitely is in a lot of ways. I think there at this point, so much of art is like based on the goodwill of the public, and I think there almost needs to be PSAs or like, awareness campaigns for people to like, hey, if you like art, you should spend money on it because otherwise it goes away.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, what the world, like, what the music world will look like when, because the majority of musicians, if they didn't start making music in the age where people bought records and they grew up in that era, like the '90s, you know what I mean? At least they were kids. At least that they watched MTV and saw that these people who they idolized were doing quite well for themselves, which maybe, even though it's not the case anymore, still that sort of faith in that will happen to me could be a driving factor. But when we all die out and the musicians are people who were born and raised
Yeah.
in sort of the streaming, no royalty,
Yeah.
like, what's that going to look like? And is that going to kill sort of the actual, not acoustic instruments, but like 4-piece band where like you need a rehearsal space? Is it just going to give way to like, since music's so expensive, I have to record my records on a laptop and like,
Well, I guess people who already have money will be the bands that stick around, I guess.
Right.
So there's
well, which is kind of
that's one
always been the
opinion.
case.
Yeah.
too.
So, maybe songs being written with a little bit less at stake. Or we're to a point where, universal basic income. I was talking to Chris Kane last night about this. He thinks universal basic income will be awesome when AI replaces all the jobs people don't want to do because everyone will get to do whatever they want and,
Yeah, possibly.
make art, whatever you want. You want to be a truck driver, you can do that too for leisure if you want.
Right. And I think with it sort of that, with Chris's sentiment in mind, I agree. I think that like what I hope and wonder is if sort of the kind of the eradication of the sort of musician as we know it now and the replacement with this sort of like minimum effort kind of identity and project social media based music scene will cause kids to become bored of that and sort of like revert back to sort of like what, like, I don't think musicians now like you and I are gonna fucking storm Spotify, but I do think the little babies who are around now who will grow up to be musicians might be like, well, fuck this, like, I have an idea, like, what if we like instead of like you played real drums and then like we recorded it and then like instead of putting it online we sold this kind of outmoded antique technology like a CD.
I
or fucking
fantasize
tape.
about this all the time.
Like, and that might
I'm
be
a coward though. I don't
just-
have the nuts to go offline.
It'll become like, oh, I know. Well, I don't think we will, but I do think there'll be sort of like once it becomes, and right now we're on sort of the down escalator towards like, because people are still thinking in the, like, I know I am in the mentality of like what a band, what being in the music industry was like when I was growing up. And once we all die out, like and once sort of the world makes it impossible to kind of create music in the way that that's been created in 20th century, it could become boring and homogenized. And I think that people will become bored by it, and like sort of hopefully there will be a bit of a sort of like anti technology
There's got to be.
uprising.
Yeah, I think there's got to be. That excites me to think about.
Well,
you
the
know?
thing that like what I first, one of the first things I like kind of lamented with the, this is before even like pre-streaming, but like the prevalence of YouTube or the internet in general is that like scenes, like regional scenes, don't really exist. And like when I was talking earlier about Amazing Baby being part of this sort of like MGMT show of, Yesayer, whatever, like that was a scene. Like there was like even like the Strokes, yeah, like that was a scene too. It was like regional. Everyone knew each other. They would watch each other's bands. Obviously, like the Seattle scene was a scene where like
I feel like there's still regional scenes, but there's just less.
But you have
potent, less at stake.
Like you kind of, especially if you're somewhere like, I mean, Seattle's interesting because it is relatively like New York is you get people from all over, but Seattle, like, I mean, those bands, like there was like Jack and Dino, and he was the guy who produced everybody, and like every band sort of was exposed to the other bands and sort of copied them and took their own, and like you didn't have unlimited access. Like you got a record, right? You couldn't like. You played it, you're like, maybe your fucking, the belt on the record player is a little broken and it plays it like a little faster. So you suddenly think, oh, wow, like I want to learn how to play this song, but like, I can't believe this is an F sharp and this riff's impossible. But then you play it like that and then you write a fucking riff based off this weird voicing that was actually a complete mistake. I'm actually basing this off of that band, Thulsa Doom, my band, like had for a while, the only thing that existed online was like a rip of our 7-inch, which in the case was, it was too fast. And I watched people covering this song.
That's trippy.
And playing this wild way. I'm like, dude, it's the easiest song to play if it was an E, which it is.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's sort of the ability to sort of not have all the information, therefore kind of make mistakes and then create sort of a sound.
So how do we create scarcity now?
Because you can't, because you can literally go to the store, you can watch how that's played. Like you don't need now, like you don't, there's no like, how did the guitarist get that sound? I bet he did this or she did this. And like,
but there's got to be a way to create scarcity now. It just would take, it's kind of like a massive marketing revolution, or like not putting your record online but somehow keeping it interesting and having people get excited. Like you only get a postcard in the mail to hear about where the shows are, which your tour could likely bomb, but it would be kind of a fun thing to try,
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know the right way to do it. I mean, I think that like if there's some way that we could segregate pop from indie rock again or something like that, and like let's leave the streaming services for like Taylor Swift and shit, and then like, but if you want to hear like interesting angular alternative rock and roll, like you gotta like go to the shows, you gotta like
you're part of like a mail order club in 2024.
I mean, I could
scoot up a little so you're still in the footage here.
I can see that happening in some capacity. Like I don't think the answer is to have sort of the Beyoncés and kind of rebel against technology.
I think there's a lot of reason to be excited now to be a musician. Like, I think a lot of the younger bands are excited about technology and like hacking the codes and hacking the mathematical algorithm to get more attention and like being able to hit a mass audience on their own. Like, I think just for guys like you and I, like it's like speaking a foreign language. It's like you watch kind of like, hey, we got this new song called Girls Like Girls, tag your friends who like girls, and the hashtag. And I can see where bands get excited about that sort of thing, but it just, to us, it feels probably very unnatural and unhuman.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, you force everybody like to be an entertainer as opposed to like a musician, and I don't think that all musicians should be entertainers at all. Like, not saying that like, I mean, playing a show is entertaining, but like kind of like having a camera ready personality and like a kind of or like a contrived image like shouldn't be a requirement to be a musician. Like that's what people who want to work on television do. You know what I mean? Like
What's the famous quote? Music was better when ugly people were allowed to make it.
Oh,
I
never
forget
heard
who
that.
said that, but it's a fun quote.
That's true. That's true, man. Like if fucking yeah, like if you looked good from like Black Sabbath are a weird looking fucking band, and like but they look really good from far away, you know, and they could choose the picture they all like. But I think that it's tough to when you have to work extra hard to seem relatable. It's almost like running for fucking office. You know what I mean? Where like you have to like have a cult of personality is more important than what you're actually standing for.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
And it's tough, but like that's the great thing about fucking the bands that still exist, like Modest Mouse, is that like no one. It's almost like if you existed before and were successful before this came about, there's not the pressure on you to play the game. Like it's almost respect that you.
What
don't.
a luxury!
Yeah, it's exactly.
Same with the We Are Scientists guys.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, they haven't reached like Modest Mouse acclaim, but they have an amazing following.
Yeah,
you know? They hit critical mass in 2007 or whatever.
Yeah, and they have enough
huge
people
following.
who kind of stuck around too. And cool. I think, and it's like this sort of like, given the sort of green light to sort of play the game however you want is definitely a luxury that like. If you don't have it now, you're not getting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to believe there's always a way, but oh wow, it's a big wall to climb over.
Yeah, for sure. It's intense, but I do have hope. I mean, there's something like I was really attracted to like the Melbourne, Australia scene that was kind of like it's changed a bit, but like especially around like 2015, like to 2019, because it was.
Like the Courtney Barnett stuff and
kind of more like sort of like more on the punker side, like Total Control, UV Race, and like
Oz has so much talent over there. Yeah, man. Those isolated nations.
But it's also the isolated, like the isolation of it is interesting because all these and the same sort of. I love the idea they all the records are produced by this guy Mikey Young, Eddie Current, and Suppression Ring dude, and like they all had this guitar sound, they all had this drum sound, they all like. Had a similar way of writing songs. They didn't sound the same, but I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. You know, this doesn't happen anymore.
Think about this, though, too. That's a country where you basically, unless you're Courtney Barnett, you can't make a living on music. You just, and I don't think you expect to. Thus, I'm sure the mindset is, well, hey, fuck it. We'll just do whatever we want because it's not, we don't have to consider commerce anyway.
Well, you can't, it's too isolated to like, it's not a big enough country to sort of make a living within it. Like, I mean, you can, but like, there's only a couple cities. You can't just blah, 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 blah.
But it's a catalyst almost to good art if you don't have to worry about the commerce.
Right, because like if you really like, to actually make a living off music, you have to leave Australia. But to leave Australia is such a big ordeal that it's almost like you can't have a sort of a family and a normal life there.
Right.
Like, it's almost like you just got to move and like, you go on tour. I mean, I know Tame Impala do this. Like, they're on tour. They have a couple weeks off in between tours. It's almost too hectic to return to Australia and come back. Like, they kind of stay where they are. Well, so once you're out, you're out.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to one of the guys who used to play in Seether on the pod, and
and they're South African, right?
South African, yeah. And so, they got big in the States. Like, one of the guys had to basically leave his wife and kid in South Africa.
Yeah.
Because otherwise music was over and music career was over. It's kind of super intense,
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the stakes are so much higher that I do think that it allows for people to kind of make music in an organic way without caring about popularity and perception, because it's not a goal. It's like it's so disruptive to kind of even go for it that like why do it?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I would be lying if I told you I didn't think about the monetary side of music, even though I feel like I'm in a good place and I get to do whatever I want. Like it's always something to think about because I want to be able to keep doing it for a living, you know? So
Oh, yeah.
it's hard to free ball it entirely, but we've been going a good hour 15, so we can wrap it up here and let you go back to your missions.
Okay.
Any song you want to play to kind of close out?
Ooh, let's see. Why don't we play the original version of Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometimes?
Everybody Wang Chung tonight?
You know, it's a fucked up Wang Chung songs, Dance All Days. Have you listened to the lyrics?
I don't know.
It's like, I feel like it's just about beating women. Like,
that used to be a thing people sang about. It's
yeah.
crazy, yeah. Brutal.
Those were the days.
Brutal.
Everybody's Got to Learn Sometimes by the Corgis. Beck covered it, but the original version is really good. And I feel like it'd be good to go out on because it's a song about learning and listening to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so Corgis, is this one of your bands or just
No. Oh, you want one of my bands or just any song?
We could play any song. Well, I don't know, Corgis might sue me. Let's play one of your songs.
All right, let's
you won't
do that
sue
too.
me.
Well, but keep that in because I want to give that song a shout out.
Okay.
Let's play well, when is this going to come out? Do you know?
Let's put it out next episode, which will be mid-Monday.
Mid-Monday. Okay, cool. So let's play New York Sorrow by Spiral Heads.
Okay. And then any shows? Obviously the Modest Mouse tour, any of your own shows?
None of my own shows so far, but we're working on stuff.
Okay.
And then, we'll keep you posted.
Simon Doom, you're the man.
Oh my
Thanks
God,
for having me over.
You.